Jay Baba. Jay Baba. And so Jeff and Denny go back almost before we can remember to junior high. And we started playing basketball actually a year before, the summer before.
In 7th grade.
In the 6th grade, was it because you started playing center for the junior high?
No, it was the 7th grade.
Yeah, it was
We were
7th
playing.
grade.
Yeah,
Where was it?
This was out in Tacoma, Washington.
Oh.
the great Northwest.
It's a beautiful state of Washington. But somehow we had gone to different grade schools in the same city, but then in junior high, there we were. And we had a great coach, Mr. Angelo, remember him?
Mm-hmm.
And so from there, I guess that's another whole lifetime. Except that we captured a wonderful 3 years together, and then went on to high school and had another good 3 years together. And during that time, Jeff would sometimes we'd double, and Jeff would, have a girlfriend and take him out, and and we'd have breakfast together or something. That's probably another story that doesn't need to be told.
Yeah, no. Denny was on the wrestling team, and because of all of the workouts that he did, his body kind of hunched over a little bit, like a little Neanderthal, and he was known and nicknamed in high school the Caveman. Here comes the Caveman. Hey, Caveman!
So it was a wonderful time, and we were very close. It wasn't just passing in the hall. Sometimes Jeff couldn't get by past me without me tripping.
But I'll tell you one thing about Denny is he was on a wrestling team, and if I went over to his house, he would want to do his wrestling holds on me, and I didn't want to let him ever pin me. But so in order not to be pinned, I would get all these rug burns because we would do it on the floor. And instead of just giving up and letting him pin me, I would not let him do it. But in the process, I would get all these rug burns, and was he's pushing me against the rug.
So we did in action.
We
Yeah.
stayed active in our physical education and things like that right on through. We did a little tumbling thing in junior high for the audience,
Oh yeah, that's right.
and it wasn't it was a big thing, but it was kind of a fun thing. It was something we did physically and enjoyed it. I don't know, were we walking in our hands then?
Yeah, that comes up later.
Okay, well, it started way back when, but anyway, there was always something physical going on there. Jeff was at basketball, on the basketball team and the baseball team, and so those experiences there, we're all involved in the fellowship of sports too.
Yeah.
But then Jeff was sang with the bands in Tacoma, and had many wonderful experiences together. You don't want to do the pancake story, huh?
No, that's okay.
I'll sneak it in later. Anyway, so then when we got together the last time before I went in the service, it was about 2 years into college. And you were going to college back in New York, and I was going to college in Bremerton, Washington. And
Okay, let me remember. Here's one thing though: is somehow we got into reading these psychic books.
oh,
There was it was produced out of Duke University. We didn't know where Duke University was, but we were very into. His mother believed in that she'd lived before. She believed in reincarnation, and we somehow got off getting these books, and all these about different psychic experiences, and we kind of believed in it. I don't know how we stumbled upon it, but we kept getting this type of a book, these books, and anyway, so we weren't hitting the spiritual life kind of unlettered. I mean, we had some background.
It was good because Jeff was a non-believer, and up until the time of your grandmother's, when you went out there to Nebraska.
Yeah.
And we had this one other friend, Butch Dunlap, and Butch, we used to all work, play together and have fun. But Butch was this staunch Catholic, and other than going to the Catholic school, his belief was everywhere, and in Catholicism. And we used to get together, and sometimes we'd have meals together, and Butch would want to say a little prayer before his meal, so we'd all kind of close our hands and eyes, and Butch would start talking and praying, and Jeff would snatch his food out from underneath it.
From his plate, yeah.
Hide it from, now what have you done? Who's got it? Anyway.
So he started saying his prayers like this, putting his hands on the food. Anyway.
Oh. So there was a glimmer. Then when we came back in college one summer, and we got together, I guess it was the second year of school, and we went up on our old junior high school roof. I think most kids do that, don't they, when they come back from the college? Anyway, there we were. The sun was beating down on the roof, and what got us up there?
I don't know, just privacy, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And nobody else was up there. But anyway, we come up with this idea that, what are we going to do in our life? Now, we're 2 years into college. What's going to happen here? And I can't remember who said first that something about Jesus.
That was you.
Was it?
Yeah.
And you still hadn't caught on yet for spirituality. No, Jeff was one of the most spiritual people in school, but he didn't go around saying God, God, God all the time. And anyway, so I think I recall saying, I believe that Jesus is here someplace on the face of the earth. And this is back in 1960.
Maybe 64.
Well, when did we go to college?
62. I think.
No, I think we went in 60. We graduated from high school in 63.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, somewhere in there.
So then, so I said, I've got a feeling Jesus is here on the face of the earth. And I'd read in the Bible something about, not in Exodus, what's the book of the Bible that starts with an R?
Revelation?
Revelations.
Revelations.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad you're here, Kath.
Yeah.
It takes a story, it takes a family to tell a story. So, Revelations, that the Christ was coming back, he'd be riding a white horse, and his flag would be that of the rainbow. And what else was it that...
I don't know about that, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So that stuck in my head. And so we're up there sitting and said, I don't know about what you're up to, Jeff, but I really want to find out where Jesus is. I know he's here. I just know in my heart. And you bought into that too. I don't recall what you said about it, but...
Well, we kind of decided whoever finds Jesus first to contact the other.
So
that was a pact.
This was, we took hands, and shook them, and
Hey, I mean...
yeah.
You mean the hand sanitizer?
So that was it. And then you went back to college that year, and when did you go out to meet your grandmother, stay with your grandmother?
No, that was in childhood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
When the idea of coming, her telling about Christ and everything? Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're here, because I had that you were pagan a lot longer. But anyway, so I didn't have any religious facility that I was preference of anymore. Just the idea that somehow he's here, and he's probably looks the same. He still has the same name pieces and everything. And so off we went to our last year of college, or the next year of college. And at that point, I'd gotten 2.5 years in, and I got a nasty paper back that I'd done on a family tradition and a family heritage and how we arrived from Scotland and Ireland to where we were in the United States, and the whole history of it. And I thought I did pretty good on it, but the teacher gave me a F on it. and I didn't get I got an F, a failure in my finals. And I thought, you know, what is this about? Did I get an F because I told them about my family? Or because of my sloppy handwriting, or what? And I just said, I've had enough college. And I quit. And for about 3 months, I got this job, 3 or 6 months working with juvenile delinquents, which I always wanted to do. And it was a wonderful experience. During that time, working with children was a real specialty. Then I got this letter in the mail saying that we'd like you to visit us from my uncle, Uncle Sam. And I knew what that letter meant. The draft was on, and it was he was wanting to know if I'd like to help out in Vietnam or someplace. And I didn't. I couldn't fathom the idea of going to Vietnam and killing. And I thought, how am I going to get out of this? So I ran to the Air Force and I said, you need any new people in the Air Force? No, our quota's kind of full right now. Well, I ran to the Navy, and it's the same story. And I tried no, I didn't try the Marines. I knew where they were all going. They were going to Vietnam, and they weren't coming back, some of them. But more importantly, I didn't want to go there in the Army because I knew if I killed anyone in Vietnam, life would mean nothing anymore. It wouldn't be sacred. So, so finally I went back to the recruiter and I said, is there any way I could get to in another field if I'd sign up? He said, yeah, you can sign up for 4 years and we'll give you some schooling and you probably won't go to Vietnam. And I said, well, 4 years, huh? I don't even want to be in for 1 day. But anyway, if that'll work. And he said, yeah, you go in the Army Security Agency and they're not exposed to this or anything, to go into Vietnam. It's illegal. So that was another story that was false, but it was a lie, and they cleared it up and everything and said, well, it's the same person that we just changed his MOS, and he goes to Vietnam. Anyway, so I went in, and on the way back to the East Coast, I ran into Jeff before I went to Massachusetts for schooling. And there we had a meeting, and it was really fun to see what Jeff was doing back there in college and everything. But it was kind of a funny time. You know, here I am in a uniform, and so we spent a couple hours, I think, or maybe a day or so, or something like that together.
This was before I told you about Bob?
Yeah.
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 What year?
This was, I think, 68. And when did you go back, drop out of school?
Dropped out a couple of times.
Well, this was before.
God. I think I
Just
dropped
before
out
that.
about 65 or 6. I dropped
66,
out.
I think, yeah. So maybe we hung out a couple of days, but anyway, I went off and went over to Turkey. Was my first assignment, and I spent a year in Turkey, and it was so nice to be in Turkey and go downtown. And very few of the soldiers went downtown. It was like they were afraid of the Turks, and the Turks were magnificent people. I mean, they were. The Armenians may not have thought so, but that was a long time ago. We have to come to the now in life always. And I was treated like I was one of the Turkish people. I'd learned the language somehow. I don't know how. I couldn't learn French. I couldn't learn any language in school. But I learned what I needed in about an 8-hour bus drive. And from there on, I could go to Turkey and talk with people, and I loved it.
Like Istanbul?
Well, I started off, we landed in Ankara,
Yeah.
and from there, we took the bus down to the Mediterranean, or not, to the Black Sea, I mean, and we were right there where Jesus was, where the, you know, the Romans were running the world at that time. It was their world. They'd abolished the Turkish Navy by coming into the Black Sea and sunk every ship they had. And there was evidence that they were putting people on crosses back then. There was crosses discovered right outside of the Cyclops, fabled cave. You know, there were. But anyway, Turkey was very historic back in that time of Jesus, and the threat of the Romans was on all the countries that they got to. But anyway, off I went next to Ethiopia, and in Ethiopia, somehow we got connected up with a couple of guys. I got connected up with a couple of guys. I had to go out to the villages and work on windmills and that. And so the Ethiopian people were so kind and loving there too. And I know this is part of a reflection of ourselves, but it doesn't matter how it happens to have that humanity that it doesn't make separations. You're an American or you're a Canadian, we all had in common our commonality, and that was it. That was all that was important. It's just we shared a moment. And so I was there for 2 years, and I had an encounter with the churches there. Somehow I didn't realize it, but some of the people we hung out with were very religious. And on the last day I was leaving, here comes someone that says, "We want you to come to this festival." So I went, and I got a place up front because that's where they put me. And afterwards they honored me for the work that we did on the windmills. And I thought, how absurd, you know, I was just a little pawn in this whole scheme. I wasn't doing anything hardly. But spirituality looks into the depth of what happens. It doesn't look at who's who and what the rest of your story of life is. They look at the moment that you were, what you were, spiritual at that moment. Anyway, I throw that in, I don't know why, but so now that I get discharged, and I'm supposed to hang around Ethiopia, but instead they send me back to Washington for discharge. I should have been discharged in Ethiopia, and then I would have traveled with a friend back to the United States, and we would have stopped in Scotland, and we would have stopped in wherever we wanted, you know, on our way back. It wouldn't have to pay for it, you know. That was it. Instead, I got to New York and Staten Island, and I got discharged, and I thought, wow, no uniform. What do I do now? What do I do now? And I said, oh, maybe I can find Jeff here in school. So I went over to college here, Columbia University, and I looked up his name in the office, and he was no longer there. And so I thought, well, shoot. I thought I'd look around some of the places where he lived, or we went to. There was the west side.
West End Bar?
Yeah, the West End Bar. And someone had said there was a guy that slept downstairs that resembled who I described as Jeff. And so I went down there and found out it wasn't Jeff at all. He may have slipped down there once,
He was
I don't know.
a bum, it looked like a bum, but it wasn't me.
So I thought, oh good, there's still hope. So I hung around trying to search, and I didn't know where to begin. And I said, I know what, I'm not gonna leave the rotunda here at the University until I find Jeff. He goes by, he's still in class, probably. He's not in class, maybe one of his friends. So I sat down and I said, I don't care if it takes a couple of days or whatever. And I'll just wait and watch people go by. And in about 10 minutes, here comes Danny Romer, this red-headed kid walking by. And I thought, God, that looks familiar. I can't remember his name. Oh yeah, that's Danny something. And hey, Danny, you know, and he turned around and I said, you're Danny Romer, Jeff Wolverton's friend? He said, yeah. And I said, oh, good, do you know where he's at? And he said, yeah, he's up in upstate studying about some Indian gods or something. I thought, oh wow, so it might be the Mohawks or one of the tribes. And so I said, well, how can I get a hold of him? And he said, well, he doesn't have a telephone. And I said, well, does anybody know how to get a hold of him? He said, yeah, a fellow Mike Levine knows how to get a hold of him. So I said, well, can you have his telephone number? And he said, no, I don't. And you know, I got to get to class right now. I said, well, just tell me where Mike Levine lives. And he said, well, he lives out by the river over that direction. And I thought, oh, but he said, I've got to go. And so off he goes. And I think, oh, shoot, Mike Levine. And so I thought, well, I'll look. And then addresses, mailboxes or something. And I tried looking through a couple places. That was just not functional. So I'll try to call him up. I started trying to call every Mike Levine I could find in the phone book. And I ran out of Mike Levines.
And in New York, there are a lot of Levines.
New York City? Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So I tried
Quarter of the population.
different spellings, you know, and how many different ways can you spell Mike Levine? I still couldn't find him. And I gave up. You know, I went down to my sister, dropped off my military stuff, and stuck around there for about a month or two. And then I thought, wow, this is not the end of this road. How in the world am I going to find where Jeff is? And so I called his mom. I called up to Vancouver, BC, and I said, do you have a listing for Charlie Wolverton? And he said, yes. And they gave me the telephone number. I thought, oh, good, let's try this. And I called, and Elizabeth, is Jeff's mom, answered the phone. And I said, Elizabeth, this is Denny Moore. I said, I'm just trying to find out how to get Jeff's telephone number. And she said, well, Jeff doesn't have a telephone, but he sometimes visits New York City to this fellow Mike Levine. And I said, Mike Levine, oh good, you know, do you have his telephone number? And she said, yeah. So she gave it to me, and this is the night before I take off to New York. I'm on my way to Frankfurt to meet this other fella that I was in the service with, that we're going to travel around Europe. So we're still going to do the traveling and everything. And so so I get the telephone number, and she said, but you know, he's not down at Mike Levine's. He's up in Schenectady, New York. I said, well, I'll call Mike and see if he knows anything. So I got on the bus, went up to New York, got off the bus, went to the phone, and called Mike Levine's house. And can you imagine who answers? Who?
Elvis. No.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Jeff answers the phone at Mike Levine's house. So I said, well, you got a little time you can talk? And he says, where are you? And I said, I'm down at the Greyhound bus station. And he said, well, yeah, I'm free, but how would I find you? He said, look around, I think.
Yeah, I had actually just come down, I think, for the weekend. Just happened to be at this place. But Denny had about a half hour before he was going to take this flight, or maybe 45 minutes. So we had to come up with a place where we could meet. And what we decided, I mean, I knew the subway system. There was one little kind of little restaurant kind of booth.
Hot dog stand.
A hot dog stand down about 3 feet below Times Square. And and somehow he got there and I got there, because he was gonna go from there out to the airport. So we met at this little counter, sitting on these stools.
Yeah.
And somehow, I don't know, I guess Denny asked me, what I was up to, and I told him I was about Mayor Baba, not the Mohawk Indians, but that's how it got translated. Even in my high school, they thought I'd gotten into Native American studies big time. But, so I gave him like the crash course about Baba in the short time we had. I gave him a picture, which you may still have in his wallet. For many years, there were these little cards, and it was the one that said, yeah, pour your drop into my ocean, and become the ocean.
Which in reality you are.
Which in reality you are. It might have been by
It was one that Sheila had made.
Sheila Christie, yeah. Anyway, I gave him that, and then I think Denny said, well, why don't you just come out to the airport with me? So I think you got a cab,
Yeah.
and we went out, because we were continually talking. I mean, it was like cram as much in, because he was like all ears. And so right up to the last moment, as the plane was taking off, we were like talking all about this. And then, waved off, and then he took off for Europe.
And all I've got is a picture of Baba. And I'm thinking, so is it true that he could be Jesus? And that's what Jeff said, this is the one and the same. And I thought, his name isn't even Jesus. How could it be the same? But there was a question. If it was real, I wanted to know. But ran out of time, and so I go to Europe. I was supposed to meet Mike in the U.S. Embassy in 2 days, and so I go back every day and check. And finally, I said, I want a couple more days, and no message from Mike or anything. And I said, well, I guess it's up to you, Jesus. You and me, let's travel through Europe for the next couple of months. And so that's what wound up happening. A lot of very touching spiritual things happened during that time. I mean, very touching. And it was unbelievable how close God was, and the adventures. The adventures were as strange as could be too while I was there, but they kept coming as spiritual connections. And
you kind of had the company of Jesus as you were
that's
going around Europe.
That's what I said when I said that. Well, all right, Jesus, you and me. And so there was a lot of focus on Jesus during this time. And I think the most memorable was the second day out of Frankfurt, when there was no chance of meeting Mike, and that was done. And I fell asleep in the middle of the road after hitchhiking all night long. And on the Autobahns there's usually greenery and places like that. And I laid my head on my pack, and I fell asleep for an hour or so. And I got up and I walked in, maybe for another 15 minutes, and here's this a hostel at well, it wasn't a youth hostel, but it was a motel or whatever. So I walked in there, and they got a room, because I was just beat. And I got something to eat, and I woke up in the middle of the night. I didn't hear, "Are you ready?" But it got a little louder, and for 3 times it was distinctly, "Are you ready?" And I woke up, and I said, "Are you ready?" No, not yet. I knew this voice was the voice of God somehow. And I'd not had that kind of an encounter before. So I was kind of, "No, not yet. What do you mean?" And it didn't, there was no more to talk about it. And I wrote it down. "Are you ready?" And I said, "No, not yet. I still have something yet to do." And pulled out my little book and tried to figure it out, and finally I just laid down and went to sleep. Got up in the morning and I left. And when I got out, it was probably about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and there was a farmer out in his tractor turning the rutabagas, and this little house, when I went across the bridge, this little house with white linen curtains and everything. It was so beautiful. And I thought about this again, what happened during the night, and I said, Jesus, what's this all about? Are you ready? And it came to me that, are you ready to join? God was saying, are you ready to come to me? And I thought, oh, wow. That was God. And I was stupefied. That I said, I don't remember what I said, but I started crying. And I thought, how could God think about me? I mean, I don't think about God that much. And my whole body started tingling. And it was like, no question now that what was going on. The feeling of God was so powerful. My body just tingles. It does whenever I tell this part of the story. But anyway, from there I said, Jesus, I wish you would tell your Father how happy I am this moment. I wish I could tell him. And that's when my body really erupted in tingling. And it was the thought, well, now you must know that I'm real, just from this expression. So, off I went for the next 2 months, traveling through Europe, and I didn't get to go to Scotland, I didn't get to go to Ireland. I got to have some very deeply spiritual experience with animals. And one time, after chasing this swan around Lake Lucerne, he had a fish hook in his mouth, and the line was wrapped around his legs. And I thought, oh, I'll call him over and I'll just get that out of his mouth. So I called him over, and he started, it just, not by voice, just by imagination. Because a lot of what we were discovering when we were back in high school was that, in junior high, that you didn't have to talk spiritually, you just had to feel. It was all through feeling. It wasn't, so the swan came over, and I reached up and grabbed the line, and I cut it. And a little drop of blood come to his lip, and off he went. And so for the next hour, I attracted him with crumbs on the dock or on the pier, and we got to off to where we were both on land, or he was either in the water or on land, and we walked for about 15 minutes, and inevitably, I got him to come up to me twice just by talking to him, and after hurting him, the second time, I had my arm around him gently, and his wings started flapping, and I let him go, and back into the water he went, because I thought, oh shoot, I don't want him to break his wings, being startled like this. I talked to this swan, and I said, listen, I don't care how many times I've got to follow you around Lake Lucerne. If it takes days or whatever, I'm sticking with you until I can get that fish hook out, because I knew it would fester in there. And all of a sudden, up he comes. And so this time, I just gently reached out, not my arm around him, containing him or anything, and I took the fish hook out. And we'd been on going around the lake probably several hours, and it was probably several days trip around the lake. And but after I told him, I don't care how, I'm going to help you if you'll allow it. And that's when he came up and took it out. And what's he do? He turns around and goes back to where we were. And that was the end of that story. And I looked up over my shoulder, and I said, God, I bet you were up to this. And this guy, this hat on, walking by with a coat and everything. And I saw him, and I looked back at the swan. I looked right back. The guy was gone. That quick. And I said, okay, I know that was you, God. I know now that was you. And it was. I mean, he didn't have time to disappear, to walk away. Anyway, So this just reinforced this was a spiritual journey. And so anyway, I went on further through Europe, and finally it was time to go back to Washington, I mean to the United States. And I flew back, and I thought, oh geez, I wish I could share this with Jeff. Oh, why not call Mike Levine's house again? So I thought, yeah, why not? And I did. And you know who answered. You gotta know who answered. Who answered?
Rarely ever went down to the city.
You hadn't been back down for another Army physical.
Yeah.
They really wanted Jeff. They got the wrong guy. I wouldn't go into Vietnam.
Yeah.
So here we are, and we sit down, and Ken Rickstad's there, and the three of us are sitting around. And Jeff and Ken had been living up in Schenectady for I don't know how long by that time.
Yeah.
You guys
Couple of years.
got out of school and you stayed together.
Yeah.
But so we sat around and we had some coffee, and those guys went to bed, and I set my coffee down and went to sleep, and I don't know how we all woke up, but we all woke up, and I took a drink of my coffee, and a damn cockroach in it. I didn't even think about that leftover coffee. In New York, you don't drink leftover coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a little laugh, and then we talked for a couple more hours. It could have been a couple more days. I don't know. It wasn't
Yeah.
long. But we went to say goodbye, and I said, listen guys, you're going to have to come out here and meet me if I don't get back here. This is just before a week before Christmas. If I don't get back by the end of January.
From Tacoma, from Seattle.
Yeah.
You don't come back from the Northwest. Yeah.
I haven't seen Mom in a long time. I've got to go out there and spend a little time, but I've got to come back and find out more about Mary Baba. And there was no question of it. Meantime, I had all these adventures. I wanted to tell about Ethiopia and all these stories. It's all about Baba. That's all we talk about. Now it's time to say goodbye. So we stand up and we put our arms around each other. And wait a minute, I'm a soldier and I don't cry, and I've been crying now. And now I'm supposed to hug these guys? And so we hug, and boy, now I really can't control the crying. I didn't do this in the Army now. No crying in the Army. And I'm going to have another story of crying coming up here, Tom. And so we hugged and said goodbye, and God, my heart was like, you really got to promise me you're going to come out and get me. Oh yeah, we'll get you in January. So I had their assurance, my buddies were going to take care of this. And I went back, and Mom had a car accident. And we had Christmas together, and as much as I wanted to get back, there was things. She needed a new roof on the garage, and a new fence. The fence was falling over. And, Christmas came and went, and December came and went, and January came and went, and nobody's knocking on my door. And I tried to get a couple of jobs. One time working with the police department, state patrol, because they had radio teletype, and that was one of the things that I was well versed on, and I thought I'd get a job with them. I tried an ambulance service too, and that didn't work because I had a beard. And they said, well, we can't have you out there with the beard running, helping on an ambulance. Why not? It's all we're doing is taking them to the hospital, and people aren't going to be thinking about whether that guy's got a beard or not when they're going to the hospital. But anyway, I said, I'll do. And the job with the state patrol didn't work. And time came by, and I bought a station wagon, and it was time to maybe give someone a ride back to the East Coast, because I was going. College was out, and so I took off. But I never contacted the University of Washington to see if anybody wanted to drive that way. It's a long drive. You're driving it yourself. So outside of Pullman, I ran into this fellow hitchhiking, and so happened that he was going back to New York City. And the year was over, and he was going to school there at University of Washington. We were at the mountain at the same time when they let off the dynamite, that they stopped the traffic and everything, where they let off the dynamite, so they could work on the construction of preventing landslides and that. And then, so off we went, and this guy was just rattling. We stopped at Yellowstone, and I thought, oh, I'm getting so tired of this guy being in the car. And but we went a little further, and here at this crossroads, there's this guy that is hitchhiking. So I pull over and ask him if he wants to go. And he said, yeah. I said, you going, where are you going? And he said, New York. And I said, oh, good. That's where I'm headed. And I said, what are you going there? And he said, well, I'm going to India to help bring Christianity to India. And I think, well, okay, you know, but that doesn't sound like the right way. Why don't you learn about their religion? Anyway, you know, they're pagans. They don't know anything about Jesus. Oh. So off we go, and I got these two guys out of the car finally, and up the highway I go to Tawny. Is that the way I went? I think so. And arrived there in Schenectady and knock on the door. Both Jeff and Ken are at home. And now what do? You guys are still working.
Yeah. Yeah, Darwin had gotten us a couple of jobs at the county nursing home. But back-breaking work, unbelievable. But we had this apartment, and we had this little Baba room where we would go in and meditate or think of Baba and everything, and we had photographs in there. And Denny was still kind of teetering whether it was Baba or Jesus, you know, and he just couldn't quite reconcile, you know, and I remember him saying, well, you go in thinking of Jesus and come out in this prayer room and then come out thinking of Baba, you know, every time, and he just go in there and be thinking of Jesus and everything, and just over time it'll be Baba again. So he was like, you know, straddling the fence. You didn't have any resistance to Baba, but
No, I didn't have
is
resistance.
is he the very same one? That was, you know.
I mean, you were teaching me the Master's Prayer. I wasn't doing very good at picking up on it.
Yeah.
We ran into...
And you know, and we were going to Darwin and Jean's meetings.
No,
too.
we weren't. No, because they were having a couple of... I haven't met Darwin yet.
Yeah.
We go to Kenny Lux's.
Okay.
But they were taking a couple of weeks off.
Okay.
And we'd go down to Peggy's restaurant and ran into some Jesus people that told me, oh, you're on the wrong track with this Mirababa stuff. But I had to find out more about Baba. There was no question of it. So finally, we went to Kenny Lux's over in Albany, and then there was going to be a picnic down in the Rileys, down at Tom and Yvonne's. And
In Woodstock.
yeah,
Where?
down at your place. You remember the place that the house that you were living in there in Woodstock?
Maher Circle.
And this was it wasn't on Silence Day. Silence Day was coming up the following week, but this was on 4th of July. And 4th of July, Darwin was going to give a talk there at your place. And so this is going to be my first chance to hear, other than Jeff and Ken Rickstad, first chance to hear about Baba. I mean, firsthand from someone who met him. Now, Jeff had only met him in a restaurant once. And that's a little story, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's...
Well, anyway, so I'm anxious to go down there. And we go down to the restaurant. I mean, we go down to Tom and Bonds.
In about 3 cars, I think. Darwin and Jean and
Yeah.
somebody. There were about 3 carloads of us.
Ken
Who went down.
Rickstad and I and Barbara went down and won. And
What year was this? What year?
this is 1971. Yeah,
And as you came into the subdivision, which direction did you turn to get to my house?
My head was turning, I have no idea.
Yeah. Somehow we arrived at your place. We have no recollection, but Darwin and Jean were there. And there was a little side room. You had a side room off the main room. And Darwin, somehow everything got herded into there. And we were sitting around, and I think Denny's...
Well, I was outside. I'd given up on speaking, listening to Darwin. I mean, we've been there for several hours. I hadn't had a chance to talk to Darwin at all. I mean, maybe I had, but but it didn't seem like it. It wasn't the appropriate moment to run up and say, "Excuse me, Mr. Shaw, can you tell me about Mama?" That wasn't the way the picnic was, just so special. And so I went off into the woods. I said, "Jeff, I got to go for a walk in the woods. I'm just really upset about this." And then people did go walking in there. And you came out and grabbed me and said, you said, "Now come on, Denny."
Yeah.
So we walked into this little side door there, and everybody was sitting around. Darwin was already sitting up front. And
There's a room about this size.
actually very similar to this, yeah.
Yeah.
Except if Darwin was sitting here,
Yeah.
there was a side door back there that we were standing at, and by your garage, going up there by the garage. And Darwin said, "Well, what would you like to? What story should I tell?" And no one said anything. And Jeff finally said, "Well."
I think I said, "Denny, ask."
Yeah, and I had questions, like a roll of toilet paper long of questions. And all of a sudden the toilet paper disappeared and I couldn't think of any question I had. And Darwin said, Jean turned around and said, Jean was sitting right where the camera was, where the video is. And Jean said, "Well, why don't you just ask him a question?" I said, "Well, what was it like the first time that you met Baba?" And Jean said, "Oh, not that story. Any other story you can ask." She said, "I've heard that story so many times." So I'm just like, what do you ask? I don't know Baba yet. I don't know what. And I said, "Well, whatever. And Darwin said, "How about I tell you the 3 incredible weeks?" And I said, "Yes, that's great. You know, I'm off the hook. I don't know anything about Baba. I don't want people to know that. It's just, I just want to hear about Baba." So Darwin starts off, and Jean says, "Well, sit down here." So I sat down on the floor in front of Jean, and Darwin says, "Well, the first day we met Baba there, 3 incredible weeks, he'd come out in the morning in the car, and we were up there sleeping up at the water tower area. But now we were down at Lower Mehrabad, and Baba started talking and sharing with us. And it was so wonderful to be there. You know, this was the first time I'd been to India to meet Baba, but it was so wonderful to see where Baba had lived. And after a while, Baba had said, "You know, you all go back upstairs and go back up to Upper Mehrabad and have lunch and lay down, and we'll meet later on in the afternoon." So we do. They went up, and Darwin says, after we had something to eat, I went and laid down, and thinking how beautiful this was. And there was a breeze coming through the upper part of the water tower, and you said, I came up with this poem. Listen to the wind as it echoes the name of God through life. And there may have been another verse, but I lost it. I have not another recollection of.
You should have seen Denny. Denny was, I don't know if you can get this on the camera. We were all gathered around, and Darwin is there. And Denny is like this, you know. He's like, you know, he's like totally off in another world listening to Darwin. You know, this just like mesmerized look on his face, and we're sitting there, they're Darwin, but we're sitting there looking at Denny like this is obviously his moment of coming to Baba. I mean, completely hook, line, and sinker, and he was off in another realm. And I mean, I was following what Darwin was saying, but this phenomenon of somebody, you're actually seeing the moment that they are taking it in completely. And it was obvious that Denny had no awareness, no lateral awareness. It was only on what Darwin was saying and whatever was happening coming through Darwin into Denny. It was really something to behold. And he had no idea, with this kind of blissful look on his face, but no awareness outside of what was coming from Darwin I would say from Baba right into his whole being, just dumped it on him.
I did have the.
They have a expression. No. I know I better not say it. Shit face.
I won't tell the pancake story then.
Anyway.
I do recall that I spent the next time laughing, just ecstatically laughing and crying, just blurtingly crying. And it wasn't any sadness, it was just the happiest moment of my life. And I don't know how long it lasted. I don't know if it was about a 5-minute talk.
No, I'd say it was about half hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could have been 2 hours. And Jeff said, or someone said, well, thank you, Darwin, and
Gene.
yeah. Oh, Gene said thank you.
No, Gene was kind of itching to go.
Oh, okay.
Back up to Schenectady.
So we all follow him out to the car, and we're standing there waving to him, and the next thing I know, Jeff's grabbing me. You remember that?
Well, I remember this scene. It was like Baba was driving off in the car.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the moment of his life was just the source of this moment was just driving off in a car. The way they would try to hold Baba's car back, you know, when at Guru Prasad when he was leaving, it was like that.
Jeff had to grab my shoulder and say, Darwin and Gene are trying to leave, and you're standing right in the way. And I thought, oh.
He was off in another zone, divine zone. Yeah.
And I'm sure many people have experienced things like that. I mean, it's not real. It's beyond real. It is real.
Yeah.
Way past real.
Everything else is surreal. Yeah. No.
Whew. So that was quite a 4th of July. The fireworks were going off in my heart, I guess. And so I guess we left too. I guess we left.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Oh, yeah. Let me say that when we were in junior high, Danny and I were able to, walk around on our hands. We were, gymnasts, and we were in this play, so we could walk upstairs and all over the place. And so, about the next year or something, we are in India, and Mansara gets the idea that here, learns that we can do.
Well, she doesn't know about this yet.
No, she knows that we were did gymnastics.
But you were painting the stones on the shutters.
Yeah.
Because Monty wanted someone to paint these stones, not paint stones, but paint to look like this around the shutters. So she asks anybody if they could paint, and no one spoke up. And I said, well, Jeff got a school scholarship for artwork at Columbia, and a full ride and everything. Jeff loves to paint. And so I said, let's talk to him. So Monty talked to him and said, it was,
And Rono, yeah.
oh yeah. And it didn't sound like that was the most enthusiastic thing you were there for, but you said yes. So that meant that we were in Baba's tomb. I wanted to go in there and help clean up the splatters, you know, those splatters that fall on the tombstone and everything. So, yeah. So we're there every day and putting in
For
some
3
hours.
weeks. Yeah.
3 weeks?
Yeah.
Wow.
But Mansari gets this idea, you know, knowing that we did gymnastics. She wants us to go in on our hands into the tomb and take darshan. I mean, I know I had a lot of crazy ideas, but I never thought of that. So, I mean, she's insistent on it, and she's up for it. And so we get up on our hands, you know, with our feet in the air, and we're, you know, out there under the portico. And then Denny goes over, steps over the threshold and everything, you know, maintains his balance. And we were so good, we could go all the way to the floor. He bows down and up. He goes off to the corner, and then I come in and, you know, and do the same thing, and we come out. And Mansari's outside, you know, making sure no Easterners come up over the hill to see this thing. You know, we actually took darshan on our hands. I mean, can you imagine how informal it used to be before? I mean, you could never do anything like that because that would be offensive to people's whatever religious sentiments and protocol. But back then, it was so informal. That's how spontaneous it could be. And I thought years later, that's probably the first time any two people have taken the darshan of the avatar on their hands, walking on their hands.
Baba must have loved it.
Yeah, I mean, that's how Baba is. I mean, he's just much more human than people.
Mansari was laughing so hard when we come out of there. She just couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah,
I wish somebody had gotten a photo of that.
Oh.
yeah.
Oh.
And now, if you even sit against the wall, oh, they get, you know, the attendant comes in. Yeah. But it was my job. It was from then on, for years later, the lower part of the mural would get worn away by people and the cleaning and the mats and everything. So it was usually about this much from the base of that kind of got worn away. So my job every year was to bring the painting down to the floor.
Inside?
I'd have to mix, yeah, inside. I'd have to mix the paints and continue the mural down. I mean, and they're all different colors because it's not just one color.
Oh,
So,
it's like art restoration.
yeah, so sometimes when people kind of, they are so concerned about, you know, wearing away the paint or leaning against the mural, I say, well, hey, you're taking away someone's job. You know, someone could be, you know, have the privilege of doing this. You know, it's not the end of the world that this mural, which has been painted and repainted quite a few times, is getting worn out, you know. But yeah.
We'd be there when Mara would come over and the women would come over and do prayers. So, but this goes on. The story still goes on. I mean, it will go on forever. Here's Tom and Kathy now, and here we are in their place. Tom would help me out with a little work once in a while. And we'd be working on redoing a house or something. Once you get together, I don't think you ever do separate. I think you just get closer and closer to Baba.
Yeah.
We will have to do part 2.
Yeah.
Oh!
But Denny did work, one of the first Westerners to live there and worked for the Mandali. And he lived there with Dr. Gower's father, Pops, you know, in Ahmednagar itself. Yeah.
That could be.
And then worked at the center, yeah, many years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, can you, the extraordinary thing that I would think of is like, here we grew up, you know, in the same part of town in Tacoma, Washington. And we would find ourselves working together on the center as caretakers. Now, what are the possibilities of that, you know?
100%.
Yeah. I mean, the two from the same
Yeah,
location.
no, that's true.
Yeah.
And here we are in your house again.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mayor Circle Part Two.
Yeah.
Praise Allah.
What was the name?
Praise
Praise
Allah.
Allah.
Oh, praise Allah. Oh,
Yeah.
I was, you know, it just hit me the other day because Tom was working on just that part of the autobiography where he's talking about leaving Winchell's and buying the land and developing Maher Circle. And then it hit me that that's where you, Denny, had that experience at Tom and Yvonne's home in Maher Circle.
Yeah.
So it's such an
That
incredible.
was brought into Mayor's Circle, you know.
Yeah.
And one
Keep me in the circle.
One late afternoon, keep me in the
The
circle.
circle. I was alone.
Yeah.
yeah, Ken Lux afterwards said, on the way driving back, we were in the car with him,
Uh-huh.
that, after the picnic. But driving back, he said, Denny, you've got to be careful. You sound manic almost, or you're. And I thought about that. All I could remember is laughing and crying. And so I don't know.
Yeah, you were laughing and crying, I remember that. I mean, but totally unaware of, like he was alone laughing and crying in the universe and we weren't even there, even though we witnessed the whole thing. Ah, yeah, Baba. Wonderful.